everybody, Stephanie here from Sewing with Stephanie. Today I'm going to show you how to take your basic torso or basic dress sloper and turn it into 3 designer tops straight from the runways. That's right, 3 designer tops. I'm going to show you how to use that sloper and to create these tops to fit your body or your model perfectly. Before we get started, make sure you hit subscribe below and give me a thumbs up so that more people can watch these videos and learn as well. And if you're interested in seeing more about my world, be sure to follow me at my blog on thestylesafari.com and on Instagram at thestylesafari. Let's get started. In order to get started with today's projects, you need 3 tracing paper copies of your torso sloper already cut out. I've already cut out the closed dart as well as the notches at the waist and at the armhole. I've marked the center front as well. Then I have lots of tape, scissors, pen or pencil. I prefer using a Sharpie and sometimes I use a pencil as well, so whatever is your preference, as well as a ruler. We might end up using a dressmaker's curve as well, and potentially also a measuring tape. So you want to have all of those options ready to go, and let's get started. Our first example is this Darren lamb tank, which has a widened crew neckline compared to the sloper. It has a very similar hem, so we might just widen it slightly. And it has curved dart instead of the traditional closed dart end. I wanted to do something that was just a slight alteration to the basic sloper, so you can see how easy it is to make little design changes with a lot of impact. It can be a little hard to manipulate the torso sloper once you've closed the dart because it is moving and pulling in different ways. But as long as we understand that at the apex point, the top of the dart is projecting outward as well as at the bottom, everything else is totally fine. I've folded it so that the waist is also sticking out, but when it's upward, that part would actually be folded in. Let's go ahead and draw in. I'm gonna use my pencil to start. I'm gonna draw that widened crew neckline to start off. Just a little bit lower, a little bit more of a comfortable neckline. And then I'm also going to open up the armhole as well. This armhole looks like it sits back and it looks like it's only about 2 or 3 inches wide as opposed to going all the way out to the top of the shoulder. So I'm gonna lower it. I'm going to take out quite a bit of this armhole. As you know, I only help you design the front of these tops. I don't know what the back looks like. But because of that, when you are creating the back, you want to make sure that the top of your shoulder here is the exact same width as what you cut on the back. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut that and open up that shape. So sometimes if you do have a mannequin or you just want to look at yourself in the mirror, you can hold this entire shape back up to yourself in the mirror and decide if you like that neckline, if you like that armhole. And then if you don't, you can always go back, tape your little pieces on, and then recut in a shape that you find that works better for you. Let's see what we can do about this curved dart. So the dart does start at the apex, which is vitally important because we want to make sure we're throwing that fullness into the apex point. However, it does look like it curves away from there. It may follow at the beginning of the traditional curve, and then it ends somewhere maybe around this point here. So I'm going to draw that curve. I'm going to make a little point here and draw that curve. So that looks like a good curve as a place for us to start. Again, I do recommend holding up this paper pattern to yourself or to your mannequin, and you can pin it on to just make sure, do I like exactly the way that curve is? The next step is just to cut away in that curve and to see what happens. So let's cut along that seam by snipping in the middle and then cutting up. And we're gonna see what the paper pattern does. The paper pattern has mostly opened up, but you can see we've got a little bit of wonkiness happening here. As I figured what would happen. Because we didn't draw that line directly through this apex point, we still have some fullness at the bottom of our pattern that we need to take care of. Now, looking at this shirt again, you can see it actually isn't quite fitted around that hemline and does look like it's opened up a bit, creating a small ripple. So it just cascades over the hips. So what I'm gonna do is cut right up into that apex point to relieve that pressure. And we've opened up the hemline. we've released the tension into that apex point, which looks very similar to this as well. So we still have a little bit of fullness at the waist here that we need to take care of. And it can be tricky when you're looking at a pattern like this to try to figure out, well, what am I supposed to do with that? There are no additional seams in this, so where's that fullness going? You can see my pattern piece is a bit more chopped up and taped because I was experimenting with a few ways to solve this problem off camera so that I can show you guys the best way to take care of this. So the best way to take care of it is to, number one, address that main issue right at the waistline. So I suggest cutting in from the outside. You can really cut in anyway. You're going to just cut through the entire pattern piece. And you can see we have a problem here because this piece is folding over into our dart, which if you were to just cut this up, you would lose all of that extra fabric in there and then the shirt would be too tight. It wouldn't fit around the waist. So we have to then pivot this piece back out to open up the inside of the dart. So I'm gonna go back down to the dart base here and cut it open. Okay, now a few things are going on. So we've opened up that dart and the pattern is flat. Do you see any issues? Issue is our fabric is still overlapping at the waistline. What we can do here are a few things. The number one thing I would recommend is to extend the base of the top by the amount of the overlap. So if the full waistline should be approximately 14.5 inches, when you true it up on a piece of paper, on another piece of tracing paper, you want to make sure that the waistline is correct. So we'll still keep it at that 6 1/4 approximately. And then you'll make sure that you add out from there to get the full 14.5 inches. So we said 14.5. Yeah. And at this point in time, we're at 13.25. So you want to add another 1.25 inches out here and then true up your waistline. That'll give you the great shape, and then when you transfer it over onto another piece of tracing paper, you're going to add onto the sideline here, and you're going to mark off with your pen the different parts of the curve so that when you're pinning it and sewing it, you know exactly how that curve is going to go. It does look like the curved dart is folded on the outside, which is a really cool seam detail with contrast stitching. So you can kind of use that inspiration to make these darts decorative. They don't just have to be hidden, they can be decorative as well. Okay, let's move on to our second project. Okay, our second project is this Dion Lee top, which has a really sexy, cool cutout. And you can see the back in this picture, it's very obvious that the back is very similar to the front. So there, you can just apply the same principles to the back of the top as the front. Personally, I would love to create this in 2 different prints. I think that would be amazing, but maybe I'll do that after. So the only thing to keep in mind with this pattern, which we'll have to go back and add, is that there is an overlap, which means regardless of what we do, we'll have to add in an extra piece of tracing paper to fill out the corner where the pieces overlap. But let's get started at designing the neckline. I'm not going to take into account the spaghetti strap because you can buy or make those yourself and put it in the very tip-top point of the neckline. So it looks like this cuts very close to the underarm. So I'm going to keep it really close. Keep that on the hole. It looks like the point goes about just a little higher than mid-armhole. So maybe right about there. And then the V cuts down, it looks like it's just at that apex point, so right here. And it has a nice soft curve to it, it's not super sharp. So I'm gonna leave a little bit of an opening here, just a little bit of a flat point for the spaghetti strap. And then I'm gonna softly curve. We're gonna draw both this long line and then the shorter top of the cutout. So this point comes from the apex. It's a little difficult to see on this shirt, in this image, but I don't believe that this piece is a cut-on fold. I believe both of these pieces are individually sewn together as a complete triangle here, and then using just a teeny tiny bit of hand stitching, they are joined together. So that's the approach I'm going to take. Good rule of thumb when doing something like this with cutouts or lines very close to the bust for coverage, I always start off on the bigger, more coverage side. You can always take things in, but if you're creating something like this and you're moving your arms around a lot, you want to make sure you have enough coverage. So let's start the pattern off with a little bit more. Maybe I decide that this one comes down a bit more. Okay. Now I'm going to draw this bottom line, which I'm going to do a dotted part for this part that's underneath. And where is it meeting? It looks like it's meeting, so obviously about the same. It's not quite as low as equidistant to the waist. It doesn't look like it angles quite the same amount. So maybe about even actually with where this top piece crosses over. So something like this. Separate pieces here. Now, I'm gonna forgo this little piece right now. You could easily just go right in and take another piece of scrap, tracing paper, maybe I'll do that. So now that we've taken care of the seam lines first, we now have to take care of all this fullness. Now, if you're looking at this piece, you can see there really aren't very many seams. The only thing that I do actually believe, I believe that there is a seam on the side here, a dart coming into the bust on both sides, because I can kind of see a hint of it, which is very easy for us because we are just going to cut straight out from that side seam into the apex on the top. We've released the fullness on the top piece, and then it will just be absorbed into the side dart. And the bottom, it's again a little bit loose, a little bit wavier of a hemline, so that gets released, cutting straight through that dart end. And there we go. Two very simple pieces. That was a really awesome flat pattern making experience because these pieces are so, you get a lot of look. So that was a really awesome pattern making experience because in these two simple pieces with one dart and one just opening up at the base of the hem, you're gonna have this really awesome, cool top. And because you're using the torso sloper that fits you or your model perfectly, you can go straight to cut instead of having to drape this on the mannequin first. I love, love simple pattern making like this. Again, you would true this up on another piece of tracing paper. Make sure you mark all of your notches, especially your waistline, so that you know how they will overlap when you sew them. I do believe that there will be, you will cut 4 of these on the front, on the top. You'll cut a full facing on both sides, and you'll close up the darts. And then the bottom, it looks like this, maybe just a facing, a half facing on the piece, which would be just the top piece to about there. Or you can just come up with a different way to finish the top. You can decide if you want to do maybe a little banding. It's up to you. Get creative with the way you finish it. Maybe I'll decide to make this top later and show you all the different ways that we can finish it. Okay, on to our third and final basic torso project. For our last project, we're gonna design this Alaya top. And just looking at this top, it's really cool because it has all sorts of seam details, which I think take care of the shaping for us. So it has a center front zip. There is a dart, a regular bust dart, but then there's this really cool curved seam detail with a cut through the middle. And there is a seam at the top where the straps come in to meet. It looks like there could be another seam along the top, but it also could just be a stitch line for a facing. So I'm going to disregard these stitch lines right here because I think they might just be decorative. So number 1, let's go in and cut right through the top. It's super straight. It looks like it's going just about center of the armhole, maybe down a bit. And I normally use my ruler for this to create a nice straight line, making sure that it's parallel to the center front so that when you make the second half, it's not making a V-neck in any way. Cut right across the top there. And let's just go ahead and cut that off. Now, I'm going to draw in the curved seam first because I think that's the most important. It looks like, actually maybe I'll draw this side seam because that's coming directly from the waist and it's angling down a bit. So I'm just going to draw a rough line first. And then the waist, this curved seam is coming in underneath the armhole. This is just a rough drawing. Something like that. But I want to make sure that the top of the curve is equidistant to the bottom of the curve. So that's about 3 inches and then about 3 inches. So let's just confirm that. Let's make it exactly 2.75. So 2 inches and 3/4. Yeah. exact here. And this curve goes in well past the regular dart line. So I have drawn it a bit small here to start, but I can have a little more fun in it. It's surprising how big this curve really is. Well, that doesn't look so nice. This is when it's really helpful to draw the seam lines on your mannequin or on yourself or on a friend, because it can look a little wonky on paper. But now that's starting to look about right. And then this line, maybe doesn't take quite as sharp of an angle as I had it. I'm gonna go this way. Okay. So now that we have that drawn in to a way that I like, let's cut onto that seam line. See what happens. So for our first cut, that curved line, we have a flat piece right here, which is great. We would cut this into two. What I'm going to do before I cut this into two is actually just put a little notch here. I know it, I should have done this if you are following along. That we should have notched this. We're going to put one notch here. I'm going to put two notches at the bottom, so that once we chop up all these pieces, we know where they go. Cutting this one in half. So I'm going to just quickly name these. I'm going to say Alaya top, circle top, and then maybe I'll call it Alaya tank, and then circle bottom. Call it Alaya tank. Okay. Now we've got those little curved pieces taken care of, so now we have to take care of this. So we know there's a seam coming up from the apex point. It looks like it's not quite on the regular seam line. It looks like it's over a bit. So maybe around here to start. So we'll cut that open. All right, almost there. We just have to take care of the bottom. Now, looking at this top, it could be two things. The fullness could be thrown in the bottom like we've done a couple times to open up the bottom. I think you decide how fitted you want this top or not. This top does look like it's very, very fitted. It has a zipper go all the way down, but you can see this model can't quite zip it up all the way, so it might be a little too fitted on the bottom for her, and that's okay. So I'm gonna keep it nice and fitted on the bottom, and I'm actually going to put some ease into the curve to open it up. So cutting through the inner circle, right through that apex point, and opening that up as ease. So I've taped down my 3 pattern pieces to an additional piece of tracing paper. I have my Alaya tank circle top, circle bottom, and I will call this Alaya tank front bodice. Now, when truing up this pattern, there are a few things to note. Number one is that because of the center front zipper, we are going to add our seam allowance to the center front, which we have not done much of. So I finished adding the seam allowance on this tank, and I've added in the notches. A few things to note. So when you have a tough corner like this and you're making a pattern, instead of extending those seam allowances out all the way, which could create a really kind of silly looking pattern piece, one of the easiest ways to do it is to extend the sewing line. So if the sewing line goes out like that and the sewing line follows here, then you can just cut the pattern straight off where the sewing lines would meet. So this becomes your cutting line. Okay, so now let's take into account our dart versus our ease. Your ease, you just leave. So I would kind of maybe redraw that line. I have a pencil here, let's see. Kind of redraw the shape of that line so that it's a nice curve. And then add in your seam allowance just as you always would. You know that when you are gathering, when you're insetting these 2 pieces into this curve, there's a bit of ease that's going to be added to this base part that you will have to pull in. In fact, I'm going to mark this. This was the notch too. That's where the 2 pieces, the top and the bottom, meet. You know that you need to pull and gather in slightly this section between those 2 notches in order to push the fullness into the base of, into where that dart end was. But finishing up this dart, if you remember on my video on how to true patterns, which I'll leave a link to, we should true this up. So the opening of this dart is 7/8. So I'm gonna mark the center of that, which is 7/16. That's the center. And I'm just gonna extend that center point out from the center of the dart. So I have that line. Now I'm gonna follow the sewing line. Here. And it follows here. So that's a little wonky, that doesn't quite work. Truthfully, I like to just extend to whatever the biggest part of the sewing line is. So if it's here, that's fine. You can also fold, you can also pinch up your fabric and fold it one way versus the other, and then see what that line would be. If you do it this way, you can always cut away the excess dart fabric later, which I like to do. And then this becomes your cutting line. Your dart ends extend all the way. And you make sure that when you create your pattern, you notch all of these points. Notch, 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 notch. So there are 6 notches, and then this is the end of the pattern piece. These are gonna pull into a dart. This is where the top and the bottom of the curved pieces meet. And this is just another knot. These two are both notches to indicate top and bottom. And then you'll finish adding your seam allowance to your bottom pieces. The last step is to create the pattern for your strap, which I would recommend doing after you cut this out in muslin, so you know the exact placement that you'd like to put those straps, the exact width that you like, and then when you're done, you would add in notch points on the top to indicate your strap width. So probably for this design, it would be the left-hand point would be the sewing line, all the way to the side, and then whatever width strap you decide you want. And you have completed another pattern piece using that basic torso. And as soon as you create the back, you can design it any way you want. I would probably continue that curve line, which I think would be really interesting. You could at some point add a pocket into the seam, which would be interesting too, and kind of take this Alaya design up a notch. That's it. If you made it to the end of this video, you have 3 brand new designer-inspired patterns that fit you or your model perfectly. They're ready for you to get sewing, and I can't wait to see what you guys make. As usual, please feel free to comment below, DM me, email me, message me, whatever, with any thoughts, feedback, or what you want to learn next. I love to hear from you, and I love to make sure that I'm teaching things that you guys want to learn. So thank you so much for following along, and I'll see you next time.